Hey, everybody, Sleepy Reader here. Um, I've got another countdown type thing. Now that I've been doing my comic book thoughts in this, bubbling over, in this countdown style, I have noticed kind of a pattern that if I have a large enough chunks, like this time I had 14 books, I think it's 14 comics. If I have a large enough chunk of comics like that, that there seems to always be one or two at the bottom of the list that I kind of wish I hadn't bought, kind of wish I hadn't spent my time reading. Then another chunk kind of in the lower middle, I had fun reading them. And then kind of the maybe usually 4 to 5 to 6 ones that I really liked a lot and that are really hard to differentiate, to rank between them. And then sometimes that's all there is, and sometimes there's one that kind of rises above and is my obvious number one. And as I say every time, this is based on my personal enjoyment at the time I read them, not some larger authority on high of judging comics. Or I'm not putting on my critic's hat. It's purely my reader's hat when I talk about these things. My personal reader hat. These are my personal vlogs. So anyway, that pattern was true this time. I often feel kind of guilty about the ones I dislike and feel like maybe I didn't give them the proper reading or the proper try, but I don't feel that guilty. I'm not going to reread them. I'm not going to keep buying them. So one of the ones, and maybe this one ranked at the bottom for me because I kind of had high expectations from the cover, from what I read about the plot, my love of science fiction, and my first glances at the art. It's a science fiction story about these aren't Earth colonists. They're just colonists from some other planet that have come to this planet. I forget what they even name the planet. Perdita. Is that like purgatory or something? Or does that mean something else in Spanish? Perdita. I'm not sure. Anyway, maybe it means... Could it mean lost? I don't know. Or found? No. So they've come over to this nearby planet to colonize it, but it's a one-way trip. They can't go back. And then there are natives, and then there's the bad aliens, another group of colonists who are bad. And it's the conflict between them and our hero, Sonata, who seemingly there's no connection between her and the music piece, a sonata. I guess they just thought it was a cool name. She has a rapport with the giant flying bird reptilian things. It reminds me a little bit of the Dragon Riders of Pern in that sense. But as I read it, I had this uneasy feeling from the art that this was based on a video game. And I don't know if it is, or maybe is a pitch for a movie or a video game. But it's highly... The artist has a lot of talent when he's drawing figures and such, but it's highly photoshopped, and so you often feel like, oh, I'm just reading someone who took clips out of a video game and then added a few drawings, collaged in a few drawings along with the video game screenshots or something. And to that end, I felt like the plot was very flat. I mean, it's hard. I like the basic elements, and there's good guys and bad guys, but I don't know. I feel like a good story, there's somehow you sense some layers in there. Or, you get to the real meat of this action and everything really quickly. But if you don't have many layers. Because, me, I like a good Hulk smash story too. Although even that can sometimes have some emotional layers. So, yeah, I just didn't get much feeling out of it, and I had too high expectations. So to me, this was my most disappointing read of the week. Unfortunately, I had, in advance, ordered this through my comic book shop, so my shop will be getting future issues, I think. But I'm just going to ask them to drop it from my list. Wonder Twins number 5, I meant to drop after number 4, and I guess I forgot to do that. And my sense after number 4 that I just, despite having liked issue number 3, that I wasn't going to like it anymore was confirmed by this issue. I just found the story kind of plodding and the humor not very funny. I enjoyed it more than Sonata. And this is the kind of thing that if I had very few comics, if comics were a rare thing in my life, I probably still would have enjoyed reading it. But with so many comics that I like, it felt pretty flat. And I hope I remember right after shooting this video to send an email to my shop and tell him to drop both of these from my list. I've said over and over I can't stand the coloring in that. Supergirl is kind of... I don't regret reading this, and I've been following Supergirl for quite a bit of time now, but this was a considerable drop from the rest of this Marc Andreyko run on Supergirl in terms of quality. It was more confused and scattered, and even though it's listed as being written by Marc Andreyko, I feel like he's biding time to do something for Brian Michael Bendis, perhaps. So it just felt weak all over. I guess I can't even remember why. It's hardly worth remembering. There's, I guess, some things just seem to happen and then they're done. Like, there's a whole lot about this axe, and then suddenly the axe is gone, and Supergirl and Superboy are somewhere else. I don't know. The art was good. Hopefully, when this crossover with Superman ends, Marc Andreyko will stay on the book and develop his own plots. Symbiote Spider-Man. Now we're fully into the middle. A whole bunch of these were very close to each other, but I rank them on the subtleties of which ones I liked a little more. Symbiote Spider-Man, good fun read, kind of some intriguing details going on about Black Cat and Mysterio and potential things to happen next issue with the Symbiote Spider-Man costume. I don't want to give away anything. So I'd say why this might rank lower than some of the others is that the art on some pages just doesn't work for me, and others it does. So, still that feeling of a mismatch between artist and writer. But very entertaining, good comic. If you like some Spider-Man, I thought it was good. Oblivion Song. As you probably know, unless you're just listening to the audio here, I'm just going to put the numbering in the edit afterwards in some letters going over the screen. Just don't feel like doing the numbers out loud. So, Oblivion Song, again, one of those kind of in-the-middle comics. This is one I always love for the coloring. I feel like the coherence of the story, or the amount that I understood from what they were showing me, had gone down a bit from previous issues. So it's a little bit lower, a lower middle rather than higher middle issue this time. But I particularly liked this spread here. I want more like that. I think, the Robert Kirkman way is to very slowly unspool things and tease things out, but I'm looking forward to explore sort of more of the extremities of this Oblivion dimension. Hawkman, not ranking as high as many of the Hawkman issues have for me, because this is kind of a filler issue in terms of what kind of story it is. It's a one-and-done story. It's kind of a neat story, but, since Hawkman's a character of reincarnation, we get kind of this seemingly endless war where he is reincarnated over and over again. So it's sort of a story from Hawkman's past that has nothing to do with Hawkman, except the fact that it's someone with a name, sort of like Katar in each iteration, who's in a maybe 1,000-year war that's kind of like World War One. So it was fun, but just not quite special enough. Didn't hook me in with my interest in the General Hawkman storyline and everything like that. Would be one you could just pick up and read by itself, though, so it has that advantage. Okay, next, this is kind of a cheat. This comic has not come out yet. I think on the back here it says it's going to come out July 10th, so pretty soon, in maybe 3 weeks. This is the ash can that my comic book shop gave me, I guess for being a big spender. So I read it and I enjoyed it, and it's very creepy, effective horror comic book. But I would have ranked it, the writing was extremely good, except for some moments where there was sudden jumps between place and time that I wanted a little better transition for. And the artist is good, but somehow I don't like, his art style doesn't appeal to me that much, and something about the coloring was a little too, I don't know, pukey or something for my taste. I'm sure other people won't feel the same way, but the artist did his own coloring, and it seems like a pretty good coloring job, but I don't know, the color choices and stuff, and maybe it goes with the horror feeling of the comic book, just did not appeal to me. So the combination of the art and the color, but there would be individual panels where I'd say, wow, this guy's a very good artist. So anyway, I think if you like horror, it's definitely a comic book to check out, and it's going to involve going underground and caves full of monsters and other things, I guess. There's some pretty gross visuals in here. So yeah, I don't know if I'll pick it up, because I actually had to pick up this issue like 2 or 3 times to finish reading it. Not because I was bored, but because I kind of felt queasy and wanted to take a break and read something more unqueasy-ish. Batman Detective Comics is ranking pretty high here. The top of my middle, you might say. Most of all because of the art. I'm just loving more and more the Brad Walker art. In fact, I'm trying to find out if I can get any Brad Walker Detective Comics original art, or see how much money that costs. But I feel like Walker is really on fire with these issues. And I just really like the style for Batman he's developed, that just feels to me like it's a bit of all the different eras of the way Batman was done. So it evokes silver and golden and 90s and modern age Batman all at the same time in a way. Let's see, any other great spreads, and the coloring is fantastic too. I guess one shouldn't underestimate that part of it. Nathan Fairburn coloring, who I've always noticed as a good, effective colorist. So, but it stays in the middle rather than rising into sort of that top group, because it was just all one big action scene, and I don't feel like the writer Tomasi gave us very much in terms of a satisfying conclusion or anything with our villain. And in fact, in the end, the villain's gonna come back, and the usual kind of thing. So it's very standard on that level, and there's no real, after the buildup of this villain, there's no real conclusive thought I can have about the Arkham Knight and her relationship to Batman and Arkham, and I don't know. It just seemed very inconclusive, so didn't quite make it to the top. Okay, now is my top 5 books, and There's 4 of them that were extremely close in my own personal pleasure in reading them. So, but I've ranked them as best I can. And then the final one, the moment I finished reading it, I said, well, okay, that's my favorite. That I loved reading this the most. So, first in this group is The Immortal Hulk. I don't like that cover. Usually Alex Ross covers wow me, but this does not. And maybe it's because I just don't like this current redesign on the Abomination that much. Although I do like Joe Bennett's interior drawings of the Abomination a lot more. And Hulk is really in trouble in this issue, and I really like how that works out. I was a little freaked out by the portrayal of Harpy slash Betty Ross. And I don't know, I know the way back time that Betty Ross turned into the Harpy, and that was a pretty scary moment, but they've really amped up the horror aspects of everything in here very effectively. There's definitely an issue where you go, yes, they're doing the Hulk as all-out horror. And the biggest villain, of course, is a human, and so often as it is in Hulk stories, it's a general, and I really hope that this general in here gets his comeuppance someday as a big finale to this comic. And then I hope the comic continues on to some other plot line, because in a way, for a very long time behind the scenes, this general, what's his name? Not Armitage. I just can't remember his name right at the moment. Has been the real villain behind everything. Fortean, General Fortean. That's interesting. There's I can't remember his first name, but there was a famous guy named Fortean who used to, I don't know when, back in the early part of the 20th century, I think, document strange events like fish falling out of the sky and other weird events. And there was a magazine, or maybe still is a magazine, called Fortean Times, which is about weird things that happen. So interesting that this general who creates weird things and chases weird things down is the villain. I like that naming. Next is Silver Surfer Black, which to me was a slow burn. What didn't read that slow, but it took a good part of the issue before I really cared about events. There seemed to be a long kind of setup of the mood of the Silver Surfer and a lot of abstraction and connections, I guess, to previous continuity somewhere. Not the continuity of the previous Silver Surfer comic, but of some other cosmic comic that I did not read involving the Black Order, I guess. So I think the Silver Surfer's in a black universe. He manages to rescue everyone else, but not himself. But then we move on to some really cool, for lack of a better word, sort of heavy metal. The artist Druillet, I can't pronounce his name, that French artist. It kind of evoked that exploring of weird, ignore this page, exploring of weird things in outer space in a wild visual style. This is drawn by Tradd Moore, and at first I was a bit disappointed on his style here because it was not nearly as detailed and fully visually thought out in as it was in his most recent indie book, New World. But when I let go of that, I started really getting into the way he's doing things here. He's using thicker lines and less backgrounds than he would have in the New World, and less. The compositions are a little different, but still some amazing panels in here. And it's definitely just fun, cosmic, goofy stuff, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. I think it's just supposed to be 5 issues, which is probably going to be just right. Although hopefully it's successful and maybe they do more Silver Surfer minis, maybe try out different artists and different styles with Silver Surfer. That would be really cool. I kind of called this on Twitter or somewhere Stan Lee and John Buscema meet Drulier, the artist who used to be in heavy metal a lot, and you can still get his albums translated into English. Yeah, so that's cool. Bronze Age Boogie was a lot of fun. Previous issues of Bronze Age Boogie might have risen up to number 1 in my list, but this issue was fun, but it was a lot of stretched out fight scenes and the like. And also this time I did not enjoy this text page. I wish they would at least do it in a more interesting font and more spaced out in the lettering. But overall, the story was really cool. I was quite surprised when they zapped everyone back to the Bronze Age, and the way that worked, and a bunch of other details were really cool. And we're slowly getting some more pictures here of how the time travel works and who's involved in the time travel, which might be monkeys from the far future, intelligent monkeys from the far future, I'm thinking. But that's just a guess. So, very, very cool. And then I'm really enjoying the backup story about, what's it called? Is it called Ursa, Major Ursa, about this intelligent bear and the evil NASA executive who's abusing and using him. So that's really good. I guess that concludes next issue will conclude this story about Major Ursa. It might total 20 pages or so. I wonder if they'll eventually collect all their backup stories from all the various Ahoy comics. Gunning for the Hits concluded. They say in the back there'll be more Gunning for Hits comics coming sometime in the indefinite future, but they concluded their story, and I enjoyed it a lot, despite feeling like they were kind of pushing a lot in. Look at these pages. They had a lot of story left to tell in this 5th issue. Maybe it should have gone. This was the 5th issue, right? Oh, it's the 6th issue. Well, it feels like it should have gone one more issue and spread out, but still worked out very nicely. It was a little bit over the top, but not too far over the top, so that our main character still remains someone that you can like and not too villainous. A little bit villainous, definitely lacking in morals. And also you can see that they ended it with a series of Polaroid pictures, kind of, and that again implied to me they were kind of in a rush to finish it. Yet despite that, I really enjoyed this 6-issue series and enjoyed it all the way to the end. Okay, my top book, my number 1, really surprised me, but the book I enjoyed reading the most was Spider-Man Life Story number 4, The 90s. And it really emotionally hooked me. We went back to the whole Clone Saga stuff, which I guess was in the 90s. I guess there was some clones that appeared near the end of the 70s or at some point, and then they became much more complicated in the Clone Saga of the 90s, which I never read. I don't think this relates very directly to the Clone Saga of the 90s, just the fact that clones are a big issue, and we have old Ben Reilly and old Peter Parker, although I think they're younger than me still. And you realize more and more as you read this that they're not, with each issue, trying to sum up a decade, but just give you a little slice of this alternative aging Peter Parker and certain twists and turns that Chip Zdarsky, the writer, just wants to make in his life. Get a little slice of it each year. And I don't know if the art's got better, or there's a different inker, or I've just gotten more used to the Mark Bagley art, but I actually was really enjoying the art in this issue more than ever, more than in previous issues. Maybe my least favorite thing actually is the coloring. The coloring's not bad, but I feel like other colorists might have really made this comic pop. So I guess if you look at this stuff, the coloring does not do much in terms of an emotional toning or a story tone. It's just the the flesh tones always look like flesh tones. The shirt always looks like a shirt. That kind of thing. So, but yeah, an amazing little story packed into here, involving the two cloned fellows, the final fate of Norman Osborn and his son. How could I not be remembering his son's name? Norman Osborn's son's name. Harry Osborn. Final fate of those two characters. Couple of interesting twists. Interesting twist at the end. I really can't even imagine where they're going to go in the 2000s. I guess at that point, Parker will be my age, I think, or maybe a little older, mid 50s, late 50s, early 60s. I'm not sure. But yeah, really love this. So it's going to be interesting. It's definitely one of those ones I want to go back and read the whole thing when it's done and maybe see even more Zdarsky's vision, which presumably was there from the beginning, but I didn't see it, and so that's why I've been liking the later. As it's been moving on, I've been liking it more. Because I've been liking it a lot since issue 2, but it's just been increasing in my pleasure with each issue. Okay, well, cheers to everybody, and I will be back soon.